Rain poured steadily over the cracked sidewalks of Glenwood Avenue, washing the gutters clean, but doing little to mask the smell of the city's forgotten corners. Under a flickering street lamp, a man in a worn brown coat crouched quietly beside a low concrete bench, setting down 3 paper plates, one with dry kibble, another with scraps of boiled chicken, and the last with a mix of both. Arthur Clay, 53, thin and grey around the temples, moved with the routine grace of someone who had done this hundreds of times. He adjusted the plates just so, brushing rain off them with the sleeve of his jacket. From the shadows, a cluster of cats emerged, sleek black ones, tabbies with missing patches of fur, and one pale calico with a limp. Arthur gave a soft whistle, almost like a lullaby. "There you are," he murmured. "You kept me waiting tonight." The cats approached without fear. They knew him. They always did. In this lonely city block, he was their constant. Behind him, laughter rang out, sharp, mocking. 3 kids on bikes zoomed past, splashing water as they shouted, "Crazy cat guy's back! Better watch it or he'll curse you with fleas!" A soda can bounced off the pavement and rolled to Arthur's knee. He didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on the cats, nodding slowly as if in silent conversation with them. The kids vanished around the corner, and silence returned. Arthur leaned back against the bench, sighing. "People don't get it. You're not just strays," he whispered. "You're survivors." He stayed there, hands in his pockets, as the rain soaked through the shoulder of his coat. The cats usually ate quickly and scattered, but tonight they didn't eat. One by one, they turned to face him, tails flicking, eyes alert. They circled him, not in menace but in intention, like they were urging him to move. Then the calico with the limp turned and started walking toward the alley beside the old auto shop. She paused at the corner, looking back. Another followed, then another. They meowed. Insistent. Arthur frowned. "What is it?" he asked softly. He stood slowly, knees creaking. The cats had never done this before. He glanced back at the bench, the untouched food now soaked in rainwater. He looked again toward the alley. The calico was waiting. Arthur stepped forward, heart beating faster than it had in years. Nobody ever waited for Arthur, until now. Arthur followed the cats through the wet alley, his footsteps slow and cautious. With each step, flashes of the past flickered in his mind, memories stitched together with both warmth and devastation. He used to stand tall in front of a whiteboard, chalk in hand, quoting dates and revolutions with the kind of passion that made even the most disinterested students lean in. "History isn't just about what happened," he'd say. "It's about what people chose to do when it mattered." His students loved him, especially the ones who felt unseen. Arthur had a way of making everyone feel like they mattered, but it had all come crashing down in a single afternoon. The accusation came from Amber Wallace, a sophomore who'd always seemed quiet, withdrawn. The story she told was devastating, how Mr. Clay had touched her shoulder inappropriately, cornered her after class. Arthur's world imploded within hours. No hearing, no due process, just immediate suspension. And behind it all was her stepfather, Curtis Wallace, a local developer with deep pockets and a long history of silencing opposition. Arthur had once spoken out against Curtis at a town zoning board meeting, objecting to a shady school land deal. Nobody connected the dots, but Arthur had. By the time the investigation quietly concluded, there wasn't enough evidence. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Parents whispered. Colleagues distanced themselves. The school board, eager to avoid scandal, let him go. Rachel couldn't bear the shame. She packed up her things and left with Kaylee, their 9-year-old daughter, without warning. "Don't contact us," the note had read. "I have to protect Kaylee from this." That was 12 years ago. Arthur hadn't seen either of them since. A cat darted ahead, pulling him from memory. He blinked and took another step through the alley. The darkness seemed less threatening now, as though the cats were shielding him somehow. These days, Arthur lived in a crumbling one-bedroom on the ground floor of a half-abandoned apartment building. Mold crept along the bathroom tiles. The heater wheezed when it worked. He survived on a modest disability check, issued after he'd been hospitalized for a breakdown 2 winters ago. The doctor had called it situational collapse. Arthur just called it losing everything. Most people ignored him. Some mocked him. Children played pranks, leaving dead rats in his doorstep. Delivery men left his groceries at the curb. Only Mrs. Jenkins, his upstairs neighbor, seemed to remember that he was human. A sharp-witted, 78-year-old with arthritis and a talent for gossip, She often handed him bowls of soup or slices of homemade cornbread. "You're not invisible to me, Arthur," she would say with a kind smile. "God doesn't forget the good ones, no matter how bad it gets." He never knew how to respond to that, but it always lodged deep in his chest, like warmth behind cracked ribs. He never missed a night of feeding the cats. Rain, wind, even flu, it didn't matter. In their quiet purring and soft footsteps, he found something close to peace, something close to purpose. And yet, tonight felt different. The cats were leading him, not following. For the first time in years, he wasn't retreating inward. He was stepping into the unknown. And deep in his bones, Arthur Clay felt it. Something was waiting, something that might finally prove he wasn't as invisible as the world had made him believe. The cats moved like shadows through the night, silent and certain. Arthur followed, his soaked shoes slapping against the uneven pavement of back alleys and forgotten side streets. They wove through trash-strewn lots, past graffiti-stained walls, finally stopping at the edge of a rusted chain-link fence. Behind it stood an old mechanic's workshop, long abandoned. The Wilson's Auto Repair sign hung at a crooked angle, one side snapped loose. Windows were broken, boarded, or blacked out. The cats gathered near a busted wooden door, meowing softly, almost urgently. Arthur hesitated. "You brought me here?" he asked, scanning the darkness for anything, anyone. Then he heard it, a cough, weak, barely audible over the wind. He climbed the fence, the wire biting into his palms. His knees ached as he dropped to the ground. The cats darted ahead, their tails flicking. Arthur stepped toward the door, heart racing, the cough growing louder now, more strained. He pushed it open, and the hinges let out a long, painful squeal. The air inside was thick with rust, damp wood, and something else, fear. He scanned the dark, until his eyes settled on a shape curled on the floor near a pile of old tires. A girl, maybe 17. She was barefoot, her clothes thin and dirty, her arms covered in bruises. Her face was hollow, cheeks sunken. When the light from the open door reached her, she flinched violently, trying to crawl backward. "It's okay," Arthur said quickly, raising his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I heard you." The cat circled her gently, brushing against her side as if reassuring her. She coughed again, then whispered, "Don't come closer." Arthur stopped where he was and slowly took off his coat. "You're freezing," he said gently. "You need something warm, please." He slid the coat toward her on the floor, inch by inch. Then he placed the bottle of water he always carried for the cats beside it, followed by a piece of bread, wrapped in paper. The girl's trembling fingers reached forward. She took the coat first, draping it around her shoulders, then the water. She drank too fast, coughed again, then clutched her stomach. "What's your name?" Arthur asked softly. The girl looked up, eyes glassy. "Zara," she whispered. He nodded, voice tight. "Zara, I'm going to help you. You need a hospital. You're not safe here." "No," she said instantly, panic flashing in her eyes. "No police." "Okay, no police," he assured her. "But someone has to help. Just a doctor. Just enough to get you warm and fed and looked at." Zara started to cry, hands covering her face. "I didn't know where else to go," she choked out. "I've been running for days." Arthur stood slowly and slipped outside. Down the block, a payphone still clung to a cracked brick wall. He picked up the receiver and dialed 911, forcing calm into his voice. "There's a girl," he said. "Sick, hurt, abandoned workshop near 12th and Collier. Please send help." He gave no name and hung up. Back inside, he knelt near Zara again. She had curled into herself, clinging to his coat. He didn't ask for her story. He just sat there, keeping watch, waiting. Then she whispered something that made his blood run cold. "I've seen you before." Arthur turned. "What do you mean?" Zara's eyes glistened with tears. "I knew you'd come. I didn't know why, just that you would. My stepfather." Her voice cracked. "He used to talk about you, said you hurt his daughter, but she was lying." Arthur's heart thudded. "What?" "I saw it happen. I was there. She made it up. He told her to." Zara looked at him, her voice barely a breath. "They ruined your life. I'm sorry." Outside, distant sirens echoed through the night. Arthur walked home in a daze, the rain easing to a cold mist that clung to his clothes. Every step echoed with Zara's voice. "They ruined your life. I'm sorry." Back inside his dim, cluttered apartment, Arthur didn't turn on the light. He went straight to the wooden trunk beneath his bed, the one he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his old teacher ID, court transcripts, newspaper clippings, and a faded birthday card from Kaylee. To Dad, I still love you, even if I can't say it out loud. Kay. He sat on the edge of the bed, card in hand, breathing through the ache in his chest. He flipped through a folder marked with a date he could never forget, the day the school board fired him. Attached was a clipping. History teacher accused in shocking allegation involving student, the girl's name, Amber Deeks, her stepfather, Carl Deeks, Zara, Amber's half-sister. Arthur's hands trembled. He remembered Carl Deeks well, loud, controlling, always hovering around students. Arthur had once filed a complaint when he noticed Carl lingering too long after a parent-teacher conference, leering at some of the sophomore girls. Nothing ever came of it. A week later, the accusations surfaced. He'd been silenced and destroyed because he tried to protect his students. The next day, Arthur stood across the street from his old high school. It hadn't changed. Same grey bricks, same proud blue flag. He hesitated before crossing. Inside, familiar corridors smelled of old books and floor wax. He kept his head down, passed a few teachers. Some recognized him. Others looked away quickly, their faces stiff with discomfort. Then, he heard a voice behind him. Mr. Clay. He turned. Principal Monroe, older now, heavier around the middle. I didn't expect to see you again, Monroe said. I won't be long, Arthur replied. I just needed to see the place. Monroe hesitated, then sighed. You should have never been fired. I can say that now. Arthur's eyes narrowed. What stopped you from saying it then? The board was pressured. Deeks was a big donor. There were whispers, threats of lawsuits. They didn't want the scandal. You were the easiest to sacrifice. Arthur nodded slowly, absorbing it. You knew I was innocent. I suspected. But suspicion doesn't win against politics. Monroe's voice softened. I'm sorry, Arthur. Arthur left without another word. That evening, Mrs. Jenkins knocked on his door, holding a folded note. A girl came by. She said to give this to you. Arthur opened it. Zara's handwriting. I'm safe. In a shelter. I want to talk. There's a woman I trust. Leah Grant. Can you take me to her? He stared at the note for a long moment. Then he grabbed his coat. 2 days later, Arthur and Zara sat across from Leah Grant in a small legal office near downtown. Leah, early 30s, sharp-eyed and direct, was the daughter of a colleague Arthur once admired. Rachel, his ex-wife, had mentored Leah during law school. Zara's hands trembled as she spoke. He made Amber lie. Carl. He told her it was the only way to protect our family, that if she didn't say it, he'd hurt me instead. Her voice cracked. She didn't know what to do. Leah leaned forward. You're saying Carl Deeks coerced your sister into falsely accusing Mr. Clay? Zara nodded. He made it all up to cover his own behavior. Arthur reported him once. That's why Carl targeted him. Amber regretted it later, but Carl wouldn't let her say anything. Arthur sat quietly, jaw clenched. The air in the room felt too thin. Leah scribbled notes. This is huge. If we can get Amber to talk, or even corroborate parts of this with your testimony, we might be able to reopen the case. Clear your name. Arthur looked at her. What's the cost? Leah paused. Going public means reopening wounds, media attention. Carl will fight back, maybe even try to sue for defamation. You'll be dragged through it again, but this time, with the truth on your side. Arthur turned to Zara. Her eyes were pleading. You didn't deserve what happened. Nobody stood up for you then. I want to now. He looked down at his hands, cracked, aged, trembling. I've lived with this shame so long, I almost forgot what it felt like to believe in justice. Leah's voice was calm. Then let's fight. Together. Later that night, alone again, in his apartment, Arthur stood at the window, watching the rain begin to fall. The cats gathered below as they always did, but this time, when he opened the door to feed them, he didn't feel invisible. For the first time in years, something stirred inside him. Not rage, not bitterness, but something warmer, hope. The courtroom was silent, tense, as Zara sat in the witness stand. She clutched a tissue in one hand, her other gripping the armrest as if to steady herself against a storm that had been building for years. Leah stood beside her, calm and clear, guiding her through the testimony. He told her what to say. Zara's voice trembled. My sister didn't want to lie, but he threatened her. And me. He said if she didn't do it, he'd make sure we both paid. The judge nodded, grim-faced. A few jurors exchanged glances. Leah gently asked, And who is he? Zara's eyes flicked toward the defense table. Carl Deeks, my stepfather. Carl sat coolly beside his attorney, hands folded, chin high. His lips twitched into something between a smirk and a sneer. Can you tell the court what happened the day Arthur Clay was accused? Zara's voice shook but didn't break. He had just reported Carl for being inappropriate with students. A week later, Carl told Amber she had to make it look like Arthur had done something, or else. He said nobody would question it, that people already didn't like how close Arthur was to some students. He used that. A few murmurs stirred in the gallery. Rachel sat near the back, her hands clenched tight in her lap. Her eyes brimmed with tears. She hadn't spoken to Arthur in over a decade. She'd believed Amber, believed Carl. And now, Arthur sat in the front row, back straight, hands motionless on his knees. He didn't look at Rachel, didn't look at Carl. He kept his eyes on Zara, steady, quiet support. Then Carl was called to the stand. He walked with confidence, adjusted his tie, and smiled faintly as he swore to tell the truth. His testimony was smooth, practiced. I never encouraged anything of the sort. These are lies, invented by a disturbed young girl. I've been nothing but a devoted stepfather. My reputation speaks for itself. Leah didn't flinch. Mr. Deeks, she said, you say this is all fabrication. Every word, Carl said smoothly. Leah turned to the court. Then I'd like to introduce a piece of supplemental evidence. Your Honor, we have a video. Carl's attorney stood. Objection, Your Honor. We weren't made aware of. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Proceed. Leah walked to the screen, inserted the drive. The courtroom dimmed slightly as the video played. Amber's face appeared, pale, tear-streaked, eyes swollen. Her voice shook. I lied. Carl made me lie. He said if I didn't, he'd hurt Zara. He said Arthur had to be ruined, or he'd ruin us. Gasps. Audible. Sharp. The courtroom erupted into murmurs, some shouting. Carl's face dropped, drained of color. The judge slammed the gavel. Order! Order! Amber's confession continued. She described everything, the threats, the manipulation, the guilt that had eaten her alive since the lie. When the screen went dark, Leah turned. This video was recorded in a secure setting 2 weeks ago. Amber has since entered protective custody. She is prepared to testify as well. Carl's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced at his attorney. It was over. The judge leaned forward, voice tight. Mr. Deeks, you are hereby remanded into custody for perjury, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of abuse pending further investigation. A bailiff moved toward Carl. For the first time, his mask cracked. The smugness vanished, replaced with cold fury and fear. Arthur didn't blink. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Zara stood near Leah, shaking slightly, but alive with a quiet strength. Rachel found Arthur beneath the overhang by the steps. Her face was streaked with tears. I was wrong, she whispered. I should have believed you. I destroyed you, and I see that now. Arthur looked at her, for the first time in years. He didn't speak, didn't reach for her. There were no words left for what had been taken. I wanted to hate you, she whispered, but I hated myself more. Arthur's voice was low even. Kaylee was just a child. You were the one who turned your back. Rachel winced. I know. I can't fix it. I just needed you to hear me say it. Arthur nodded once. Not in forgiveness, but in finality. He walked past her, into the rain, the courthouse fading behind him. His name was clear now, but the scars remained, and he would carry them alone. Months passed. The headlines faded, but the impact remained. Carl Deeks was denied bail and faced a long trial, not just for what he did to Arthur, but for a staggering pattern of abuse and intimidation stretching back years. Arthur Clay declined the press interviews, the media attention, the vindication tour people said he deserved. He didn't want revenge. He wanted purpose. The school board offered him a chance to return, a quiet reinstatement, a generous salary, even a public apology. Arthur took none of it. Instead, he requested a role as a behind-the-scenes consultant, advising on student safety policies, teacher protections, and misconduct reporting. They gave him a modest office. He visited once a week. That was enough. What mattered more was what he and Leah had built together, a non-profit foundation for the falsely accused, for people like him who had been erased, and for abuse survivors like Zara, who were forced into silence. Zara spoke at their first event, nervous but radiant with resolve. She'd found her voice, and with it, purpose of her own. She was in therapy, working toward college, helping other girls like herself. Arthur sat in the back as she spoke. He didn't need the spotlight. He just needed to see her smile. Then, one day, a message came. "Hey, it's Kaylee. Mum told me what happened. I didn't know. I thought I did, but I didn't. Can we talk? Maybe coffee?" Arthur stared at the screen for a long time. His hand trembled slightly as he typed back. "One step at a time. Coffee sounds like a start." She replied with a simple heart emoji. He smiled, tentatively, slowly. At the apartment complex, things were different now. The neighbours who once mocked or avoided him now offered nods, sometimes even greetings. The super who once called him the weird cat guy now waved every time he passed. The change was quiet, earned. He still fed the cats every evening. That would never change, but he wasn't alone anymore. One evening, a young boy, Malik from 3C, showed up with his own little bag of kibble. "Can I help?" he asked shyly. Arthur nodded. Of course. They set up bowls together. The cats circled their ankles, purring. Mrs. Jenkins came downstairs with a little blanket in her arms. One of the kittens curled up, already asleep. She hugged Arthur gently, her frail hands warm on his back. "Told you weren't invisible," she whispered, her voice tight with emotion. Arthur looked at her, eyes glinting. "You were the only one who saw me when I couldn't even see myself." She smiled, wiping at her eyes. As the night deepened and the cats settled, Arthur leaned back on the bench. The street lamp flickered, casting soft light over the sidewalk. The world hadn't undone what was lost. It never could, but something new had begun. Arthur was still quiet, still preferred the background, but now he was no longer a ghost. He was a man rebuilding, with scars, with strength, and with a hand always reaching out should someone else stumble into the dark, looking for someone who might believe them. He'd be there, because he knew what it meant to be invisible, and what it took to be seen again. The street is quiet, night air cool against Arthur's face as he settles onto the old bench behind the building, the same place he had sat 100 nights before, when he thought no one would ever see him again. The street lamp hums overhead, casting a warm circle of light around him, and the scattering of cats that gather, tails swaying, soft meows cutting through the silence. He lays down the bowls gently. No rush, no urgency, just peace. One cat, the ginger tabby with a torn ear and defiant eyes, jumps up onto his lap and curls into a purring ball. He'd named her Hope the night after Zara's first court appearance. She hadn't missed a feeding since. Arthur rests a hand on her back, absently stroking her fur. His eyes lift toward the sky, a velvet stretch of stars above the low rooftops. His phone buzzes softly. A message from Zara. "I passed my GED. You're the reason I'm still here." Arthur reads it twice, then types back, his fingers trembling, just slightly. "No, you're the reason I am." He stares at the screen a moment longer, then places the phone beside him. The warmth of hope in his lap anchors him. The night is still, full. No applause, no headline, just a quiet knowing in his chest that he didn't just survive. He came back, from the silence, from the shadows, from the place they left him. He closes his eyes, the stars reflected faintly in the wet corners of his lashes. Voice over, as the screen fades to black. "The world turned its back on me, but the ones no one cared for, they saved." Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.